I found evidence that my half-brother might have killed our father, and I had exactly 6 hours before I had to sit across from him in a boardroom and pretend everything was normal. My name is Julian Cole, and 48 hours ago, I inherited a $50 billion luxury empire. But the inheritance came with a condition: compete against Daniel, my secret half-brother, for 1 year. Winner takes control. Loser gets nothing. Except I wasn't planning to lose anymore, because the files I found in my father's hidden safe changed everything. Daniel wasn't just the forgotten son looking for his place in the family. He was something far more dangerous. And I had 6 hours to figure out what. The sun was coming up over Manhattan when I finally left my father's office, carrying a leather folder stuffed with documents I wasn't supposed to see. My hands were still shaking from what I'd read. Inside that folder were bank statements, private investigator reports, emails between my father and someone named Victor, and photographs. So many photographs of Daniel. Daniel at Oxford, but the dates didn't match his official graduation year. Daniel at a luxury watch auction in Geneva, standing next to men my father had circled in red ink with question marks. Daniel at a private estate in the English countryside, the kind of place that doesn't appear on any map. And one photo that made my blood run cold: Daniel shaking hands with Dmitry Volkov, a Russian oligarch who'd been banned from doing business in the US after accusations of money laundering through luxury goods. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through possibilities. My father had been investigating Daniel. For how long? What had he found? And most importantly, why hadn't he stopped the will? Why still give Daniel a chance at the company if he suspected something was wrong? Unless my father wanted me to find this. Wanted me to investigate. Wanted me to prove myself by uncovering the truth. That would be exactly like him. Never hand me anything. Make me earn it, even from beyond the grave. When I got back to my penthouse, I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching. Daniel Cole. Daniel Morrison, using his mother's last name. Oxford, class of 2015. Graduated with honors in international business. Work history at Mont Blanc Patek Philippe. Launched his own brand called Morrison Luxury Goods in 2018. Sold it in 2022 for $200 million. On paper, it all looked perfect. Too perfect. I started digging deeper. Morrison Luxury Goods. I found the acquisition announcement. The company was bought by a private equity firm called Hexagon Capital, registered in the Cayman Islands. I searched Hexagon Capital. Minimal information. A shell company probably. I checked who else they'd acquired. 3 other luxury brands, all within the past 5 years. All of them had failed within 18 months of acquisition. That was strange. You don't buy companies to run them into the ground unless you're doing something else. Money laundering? Asset stripping? I needed help. Real help. I grabbed my phone and called the one person I knew who could dig up dirt on anyone, Marcus Chun, my college roommate, and now investigative journalist at the Financial Times. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice groggy. Julian, it's 6 a.m. Someone better be dead. My father is dead, I said, and I need you to investigate someone. An hour later, Marcus was sitting in my living room, drinking coffee and looking at the documents I'd spread across my dining table. He was the opposite of me in every way. Focused, disciplined, actually earned his success. We'd been roommates at Columbia, and he'd somehow tolerated my partying while pulling straight A's. This is insane, Marcus said, flipping through pages. Your dad had a whole secret investigation going on. Can you help me or not? I asked. I need to know who Daniel really is before the board meeting at noon. Marcus looked at me, and I could see him calculating. As a journalist, this was a massive story. As my friend, this was risky. If I do this, he said slowly, and I find something, you have to let me publish it. Eventually, when the time is right. Deal, I said without hesitation. Just tell me the truth first. Marcus pulled out his laptop and started typing. Okay, let's start with the basics. Daniel Cole, born 1992 in London to Elena Morrison. Father listed as unknown on birth certificate, which tracks with your dad, keeping it secret. He pulled up records, cross-referencing databases I didn't even know existed. Oxford enrollment confirmed. But here's something weird. He took a gap year in 2011 to 2012. Official reason was travel and personal development. No social media posts from that year. No credit card transactions I can find. He just disappeared. People don't just disappear, I said. Rich kids on gap years are all over Instagram. Exactly. Marcus kept typing. Now, let's look at Morrison Luxury Goods. Company founded in 2018 with initial capital of £5 million. That's roughly $6.5 million. Where'd he get that money? Maybe my father gave it to him. Marcus shook his head. I checked the paper trail. The money came from a trust based in Switzerland. Beneficiary is listed as Daniel Morrison, but the trust was established in 2012 by someone else. The pieces were clicking together, but the picture they formed didn't make sense. Who established the trust? I asked. That's where it gets interesting, Marcus said, turning his laptop toward me. The trust was created by a company called Sovereign Holdings, which is owned by... He pulled up a corporate structure chart that looked like a spider web. A bunch of shell companies that eventually trace back to Dmitry Volkov. There it was, the Russian oligarch from the photograph. So Volkov gave Daniel $6.5 million in 2012, I said slowly. Right after Daniel's mysterious gap year. Then Daniel uses that money to start a luxury company, which gets acquired by another one of Volkov's shell companies 10 years later for $200 million. Which is probably money laundering, Marcus added. You sell a company to yourself for an inflated price. Now that dirty money is clean investment capital. But why? I asked, standing up to pace. Why would Volkov invest in Daniel? What's the connection? Maybe your father found out, Marcus suggested. Maybe that's why he was investigating. Maybe Daniel's entire career is built on Russian oligarch money, and your father discovered it. I checked the time. 9 a.m. 3 hours until the board meeting. I need more, I said. This isn't enough to prove anything. Daniel can just say he had an investor. People have investors. Marcus nodded. Then we need to find out what happened during that gap year. Where did Daniel go? What was he doing? That's the missing piece. How do we find that out in 3 hours? We don't, Marcus said, but I can put out some feelers. I have contacts in London, people who track the wealthy and connected. If Daniel was doing something noteworthy during that year, someone will remember. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Blackwell, the CFO. Board meeting moved up to 10 a.m. Daniel's request. He wants to present his strategy for international expansion. Please be prompt. I showed Marcus the text. He's making a move already. Of course he is, Marcus said. He's been planning this for years. You've had 2 days. That stung, mostly because it was true. But something my father used to say came back to me. Julian, being unprepared isn't always a disadvantage. Sometimes it means you're not locked into a strategy. You can adapt. Maybe I didn't need to have all the answers. Maybe I just needed to ask the right questions. Keep digging, I told Marcus. Find out about that gap year. I'm going to the board meeting. What are you going to do? I'm going to see if I can make my brother nervous. Cole Industries. Cole Industries headquarters at 10 a.m. was a different world than it had been at 3 a.m. Now it was full of executives in power suits, assistants rushing with coffee, the hum of a multi-billion-dollar operation in motion. I'd gone home to shower and change into my best Tom Ford suit, the navy one my father had bought me for his 60th birthday party. I'd hated it then, thought it made me look too corporate. Now I was grateful for the armor. I stepped off the elevator onto the executive floor and immediately saw Daniel. He was standing outside the boardroom, talking to Catherine Joe and 2 other board members. They were all laughing at something he'd said. When he saw me, his expression shifted into something that looked like concern. Julian, he said, walking over. I hope you don't mind that I moved the meeting up. I thought the sooner we get started, the sooner we can begin making progress. Progress, I repeated. Right. That's what this is about. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. You look tired. Didn't sleep. I was going through some of Dad's old files, I said, watching his face carefully. Found some interesting things in his office. Was that a flicker of tension in his jaw? It was gone too quickly to be sure. Marcus was a meticulous record keeper, Daniel said smoothly. I'm sure there's a lot to go through. Especially the recent stuff, I continued. Files from the last few months. Private investigations. Offshore accounts. You know, the usual billionaire stuff. This time I definitely saw it. A tightening around his eyes. I didn't know Marcus was involved in offshore investments, Daniel said carefully. That seems unlike him. He always prided himself on transparency. Oh, he wasn't investing, I said. He was investigating. Before Daniel could respond, Richard Blackwell appeared in the doorway. Gentlemen, we're ready for you. The boardroom was packed. All 12 board members, plus department heads, legal counsel, and Sarah Chun, my father's attorney. I took my seat at the head of the table, my father's chair. Daniel sat to my right, in what had always been the COO's position. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Daniel began, standing up. He had a presentation cued on the massive screen behind him. I wanted to share my vision for Cole Industries' international expansion. I believe we have an opportunity to double our European market share within the next 18 months. The presentation was impressive, I had to admit. Charts showing market analysis, proposed partnerships with European luxury retailers, strategies for breaking into emerging markets. Daniel spoke confidently, fielding questions from board members with ease. He'd done his homework. This wasn't thrown together. This was planned. The key, Daniel was saying, is strategic partnerships. I have relationships with several key players in the European luxury market who are interested in collaboration. What kind of relationships? I asked, interrupting. Daniel paused, looking at me. Professional relationships. from my time working in the industry. Can you be more specific? I pressed, because I'm curious about your business philosophy. For example, your company, Morrison Luxury Goods. That was quite successful. Thank you, Daniel said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I'm proud of what we built. And the sale, I continued. $200 million to Hexagon Capital. That's impressive for a company that was only 4 years old. What was your secret? The room was getting uncomfortable. I could feel board members shifting in their seats. Julian, Richard said carefully, perhaps we should focus on the present strategy rather than. I'm just trying to understand my brother's business acumen, I said, keeping my eyes on Daniel. Since we're going to be competing, I want to know what I'm up against. So Daniel, what made Morrison Luxury Goods so valuable? Daniel's expression had gone cold. We built a strong brand identity, secured exclusive distribution channels, and created products that resonated with high-net-worth consumers. Basic business principles, really. And Hexagon Capital, I said, what attracted them to your company specifically? You'd have to ask them, Daniel replied. I assume they saw growth potential. Interesting, I said, because Hexagon Capital has acquired 4 other luxury companies in the past 5 years. Morrison Luxury Goods was the 4th. And all 4 companies failed within 18 months of acquisition, except yours, which they sold off piece by piece. Makes me wonder if they were actually interested in running a business or just moving money around. The room went dead silent. Daniel's jaw tightened visibly. I'm not responsible for what happened after I sold the company. Of course not, I said, but I am curious about your investor relationships. For transparency, since we're all going to be working together, I think the board deserves to know who you've done business with. Don't you agree? Catherine Jo spoke up. Julian, what exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm asking direct questions. For example, Daniel, do you know Dmitry Volkov? The color drained from Daniel's face. Just for a second, but everyone saw it. I've met him, Daniel said carefully, at industry events. He collects watches. Funny, I said, because I have a photograph of you two at a private estate in England. Doesn't look like an industry event. Looks pretty intimate, actually. I pulled up the photo on my phone and passed it to Richard. His eyes widened as he looked at it. Where did you get this? Daniel asked, his voice tight. My father's files, I said. The ones from his private investigation. Turns out Dad was very interested in your business relationships, Daniel. Especially the ones with Russian oligarchs under U.S. sanctions. This is ridiculous, Daniel said, standing up. Julian is clearly grasping at straws because he's threatened by actual competence. Yes, I've met Dmitry Volkov. Many people in the luxury industry have. That doesn't mean, what about the trust fund? I interrupted. The one established in 2012 by Sovereign Holdings, which traces back to Volkov. The trust that gave you $6.5 million to start your company. Was that also just an industry connection? The board erupted. Questions being shouted, Sarah Chun demanding to see documentation, Daniel's face going from pale to red. You investigated me? Daniel said, his careful composure finally cracking. You've known I existed for 48 hours, and you're already trying to sabotage me? I'm trying to protect this company, I shot back. Something you'd understand if you actually cared about it instead of seeing it as another money laundering opportunity. That's enough. Richard Blackwell's voice cut through the chaos. Both of you sit down. We both sat, but neither of us broke eye contact. Julian, Richard said, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof of money laundering? I have proof that Daniel's career was funded by a sanctioned Russian oligarch, I said. I have proof that his company was acquired by a known shell corporation. And I have proof that our father was investigating all of this before he died. That proves nothing, Daniel said, his voice cold now. All pretense of brotherly warmth was gone. Marcus was paranoid in his old age, seeing conspiracies everywhere. That's probably what gave him the heart attack that killed him. The way he said it, the casual dismissal of our father's death. Something clicked in my head. You were at the hospital, I said slowly. The night Dad died. How did you know to be there? Daniel's expression flickered. Elena told me. She'd kept tabs on Marcus over the years. But Dad's heart attack happened at 11 p.m., I said. He was pronounced dead at 11:47. I got the call at 11:52. The hospital didn't release any information until I arrived at 12:30. So how did your mother know to tell you? Daniel stood up. I don't have to answer these conspiracy theories. This is exactly the kind of impulsive, paranoid behavior that proves you're not fit to run this company. He looked at the board members. I came here in good faith, hoping to work with my brother. But it's clear Julian sees me as an enemy rather than an ally. So let me be clear. I will compete for this company. I will win. And when I do, my first act as CEO will be to remove anyone who enabled this witch hunt. Daniel walked out, and half the board members followed him. The ones who stayed looked shell-shocked. Julian, Saracen said quietly. Do you have actual evidence of wrongdoing, or was that a fishing expedition? I have evidence of connections, I admitted. Not crimes. Not yet. Richard Blackwell leaned back in his chair. Then you just made a very powerful enemy. Daniel now has legitimate grievance to claim you're trying to sabotage him. The board members who left with him, they're going to be in his corner now. Good, I said, though my heart was pounding. Let him think I've shown all my cards. Catherine Jo was still in the room, studying me. Your father would have handled this differently, she said. He would have investigated quietly, built an ironclad case before making accusations. My father also ended up dead while investigating my brother, I said. Maybe quiet wasn't working. I left the boardroom and immediately called Marcus. Tell me you found something. Maybe, Marcus said. I have a contact in London who remembers Daniel from that gap year. Says he was hanging around with some very questionable people. Russian and Ukrainian businessmen mostly. Guys who made their money in the chaos after the Soviet Union fell. So he was recruited, I said. Volkov or someone like him found a smart kid who happened to be Marcus Cole's secret son and saw an opportunity. That's my guess, Marcus agreed. They invested in him, built him up, probably with the long-term goal of getting inside coal industries. Your father was a genius, Julian. He built one of the most successful luxury empires in the world. That kind of operation is perfect for money laundering. High-value goods, international shipping, complex supply chains. It's why the Russian oligarchs love art and luxury goods. I felt sick. So Daniel's entire relationship with Dad, the reunion, asking for recognition, it was all just to get access to the company. Probably, Marcus said. But here's the thing, we can't prove any of this. Connection isn't crime. You've got circumstantial evidence and your gut instinct. What about Dad's death? I asked. The heart attack. Is there any way to? I'm already looking into it, Marcus said. I have a contact at the hospital. But Julian, even if you're right, even if this was murder, you're not equipped to investigate it. You need to go to the FBI. And tell them what? I asked. That my brother might have killed my father based on a photo and some offshore bank accounts? They'll laugh me out of the building. Then what's your play? I do what Dad wanted, I said. I compete. I win the company. And while I'm doing that, I keep digging until I have proof. That night, I sat in my father's study in his house, the one I'd inherited. My mother was in Paris, had been for weeks. We still hadn't spoken about Dad's death, about Daniel, about any of it. She was processing in her own way, which apparently meant pretending none of it was happening. I poured myself another drink and looked at the walls covered in photos. My father's life in pictures. Building his first watch. Opening his first store. Shaking hands with presidents and celebrities. And there in the corner, a small photo I'd never noticed before. My father with a woman I didn't recognize, young and beautiful. They were standing outside a watch shop in London. She was pregnant. I pulled the photo off the wall. On the back, in my father's handwriting, Elena, 1991. Daniel's mother. Before Daniel was born. They looked happy. Whatever had happened between them, there had been genuine feeling once. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Julian. It was Daniel's voice. We need to talk. I think we talked enough at the board meeting, I said. That was a performance for the board, Daniel said. This is between brothers. Meet me at the original Cole workshop. The one in Brooklyn. Tonight. Why would I do that? Because I'm going to tell you the truth, Daniel said. All of it. What Marcus knew, what he was investigating, and why he called me 3 weeks before he died begging me to stop. My blood went cold. Stop what? Meet me and find out. Come alone, Julian. If you bring anyone, I leave and you never get answers. He hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, my mind racing. This was obviously a trap. Or a setup. Or something dangerous. But it was also the first real break I'd had. Daniel was offering answers. Could I trust him? Absolutely not. Should I go anyway? Probably not. Was I going to go? I looked at my father's photo one more time. You wanted me to prove myself, I said to his image. Here's your chance. I grabbed my keys and headed for Brooklyn. The original Cole workshop was in a warehouse district that had been gentrified into artist lofts and trendy restaurants. But the workshop itself remained untouched, exactly as my father had left it decades ago when he moved operations to Manhattan. It was after midnight when I pulled up. The street was empty, streetlights casting long shadows. The workshop's windows were dark. This was a terrible idea. I knew it was a terrible idea. I sent my location to Marcus with a message. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, call the police. Then I got out of the car and walked to the workshop door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open, and the smell hit me immediately. Old wood, machine oil, metal polish. The smells of my childhood, back when Dad used to bring me here and let me watch him work. Julian. Daniel's voice came from the back of the workshop. I wasn't sure you'd come. I'm here, I said, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. Start talking. Not yet, Daniel said, and I heard movement. First, you need to see something. Lights flickered on, illuminating the workshop. And there, standing next to Daniel, was someone I recognized from the photographs in my father's files. Victor, the man my father had been emailing. The private investigator. Hello, Julian, Victor said in a thick Russian accent. Your father hired me 6 months ago. To investigate you. What? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Not Daniel, Victor continued. You. Because Marcus suspected you were the one working with Volkov. My world shattered. That's insane. I don't even know Volkov. Don't you? Daniel stepped forward, holding a tablet. He turned it toward me, showing photos. Me at a nightclub in Dubai last year. In the background, barely visible, Dmitry Volkov. Me at a watch auction in Geneva. 2 seats away, Volkov. Me at a party in the Hamptons. Volkov in the same frame. I've never met him, I said, my voice shaking. These are coincidences. That's what I told Marcus, Daniel said. But he didn't believe me. He thought you'd been compromised without knowing it. That Volkov's people had gotten close to you through your friends, your girlfriends, your party lifestyle. That you were the perfect unwitting asset. So the competition, I said slowly. The will. Making us fight for control. Was a test, Daniel finished. To see which one of us was really loyal. Which one of us would protect the company. And which one of us would try to destroy the other to get control. You're lying, I said, but my voice cracked. Because it made a terrible kind of sense. My father's disappointment. His constant criticism. His decision to bring Daniel in. Why would I lie? Daniel asked. I already have the board on my side after your performance today. But I'm giving you a chance, Julian. The same chance Marcus gave me. Prove your loyalty. Help me figure out who really killed our father. And if I don't, then Victor goes to the FBI with everything he found, Daniel said. And you go to prison for conspiracy to commit money laundering. Your choice, brother. The workshop door slammed open behind me. I spun around to see armed men rushing in, red laser sights dancing across my chest. FBI. Hands where we can see them. I looked back at Daniel, at Victor, at the trap I'd walked straight into. This wasn't about brotherhood. This wasn't about the company. This was about survival. And I just lost the first round. My father's voice echoed in my head. Julian, you're going to fail. A lot. Yeah, Dad. I know.